Father Simon and the members of the BBC Judicial Triumvirate.
Yes.
That's fab.
That's what we are.
The BJT, he's calling it, all right? It's almost a sandwich.
It is.
Or an Indian political party, but not quite. My confession goes back 27 years to a simpler time when the Channel Tunnel was still under construction. John Barnes told us to hold and give and do it at the right time. And, of course, Macaulay Culkin was a Hollywood sensation. You will, of course, remember Home Alone, a movie with the plot so implausible makes you want to yell at the screen with fury and gives a whole new meaning to the term incompetent parenthood. But I digress. Which is true, the parents are spectacularly terrible. I was 6 years old, says Nathan at the time. That movie came out, and for a kid of my age, the concept of a young boy taking on a pair of burglars all by himself was the most exciting I had experienced. I watched Home Alone countless times and would spend hours fantasizing about battling prospective thieves and villains and protecting family property. Gradually, I was no longer feeling satisfied with just fantasies. I wanted to become Kenvin for a brief moment and live the dream of thwarting criminals and outsmarting dumb adults. I therefore began setting traps all over the house.
What?
Causing great... The whole point is it's against burglars, not against your family.
Just in case.
Causing great angst to my poor parents, I balanced buckets of water over doors, left toy cars at the bottom of stairs. Really? Balanced books inside toy cupboards, all that kind of thing. Wow, Nathan, you were a lot of fun. After a while, my parents had become accustomed to all of my traps and no longer fell for them. I was starting to run out of ideas and I needed fresh victims. Dear me, send him to boarding school.
Obviously.
A few weeks later, we were invited to my grandparents' house to celebrate my grandmother's birthday. As she was entering her fabulous 50s, it was to be a rather large party with uncles, aunts, cousins and everything. I was probably the youngest in the family, and pretty soon I was feeling bored and restless. After a fruitless hour of trying to keep myself entertained by excavating my nostrils...
Lovely.
I had one of those light bulb moments and a sinister grin appeared on my face. Now, my grandfather was a collector of antiquities.
Oh, well, that's going to be fine. Yes.
Had a large number of statues, old furniture, vases, porcelain, bit of bronze, you get the picture. It was the perfect setting. Whilst everyone was chatting in the living room, I sneaked out to the hallway unobserved. There I set about preparing what was to be my masterpiece, my Mona Lisa, my girl with the pearl earring. Left out of the doorway to the living room was a table with a large vase resting on top. To the right, a tall display cabinet with a twin door set up. Like in a trance, I rummaged up some string and crept back to the hallway, closing the living room door behind me. I then set up tying the vase and the cabinet door handles to the doorknob methodically, making sure that the string was tight and that the knots were secure. Kevin McAllister would have been so proud. Everyone else, Nathan, thinks you're an idiot. When everything was prepared, I ran back to the living room through the kitchen, thus leaving the door shut and the trap set. I quietly sat down on the couch, my hands locked in front of me and resting on my lap, looking like an angel. What I did not know at the time was A, the vase was bronze and thus carried a lot of weight. B, the cabinet doors were locked and the cabinet itself top-heavy. It did not take long for someone to test the living room door, and indeed my grandmother's sister grabbed the doorknob and pulled gently. The door did not budge. Looking surprised, she lifted her head, turned back to us and said, "Is the door locked?" To which my grandfather replied, "Course not, dear. There isn't even a key for that door." That reply apparently boosted her confidence because she tried the doorknob a second time, this time with significantly more force, and sprung it open.
Yeah.
Nanoseconds later, there was a sickening noise as the cabinet came crashing down in front of her from one side, whilst the heavy bronze vase attacked her from the other side. Tumbling on the floor, bits of glass flying everywhere, she screamed with panic and took a step back, tripping over the living room carpet and landing on a guest. In the meantime, my grandfather stood up in horror, tears in his eyes, saying, "My antiques! My antiques!" He stumbled forward to save what he could from the ruins, but tripped and fell on top of the already prone guest and my grandmother's sister, who was still hyperventilating and sobbing uncontrollably. I am ashamed to admit I actually enjoyed the spectacle.
What?
And actually imagined what my acceptance speech was going to be like when I was to receive the Medal of Bravery from the local police for having outsmarted the criminals. Nathan! My parents, of course, immediately knew what had happened and were looking pale as snow, but said nothing. Perhaps they were too ashamed for bringing such a devil into the world. In any case, 25 years later, I feel the need for forgiveness, Father Simon, and the members of the BJT, that's you guys, from my grandfather for having ruined his antiques, my grandmother for having ruined her 50th birthday party, although she can't claim it didn't go with a bang, my parents for having to deal with such a difficult child and suffer the embarrassment that goes with it, and to my grandmother's sister, who could very well have received the shock of her life on that day. Personally, I blame it on Kevin, says Nathan. I don't think you're going to get away with any of this. You do sound a particularly challenging
That's the word we use now. Yeah.
So imagine Nathan's parents coming for for the parents' evening at school. I've just got a few words to say. Anyway, Sister Bobby.
Well, whilst I kind of applaud you for exploration of all the forces, you know, the forces of physics and kind of what works and doesn't work and weights and measures and all that, that's a good thing. However, it wasn't for good intentions. It was for mischievous intentions. But then you're young, Nathan, so it's really difficult. But you don't sound very sorry now about your granddad's things. So you may not have appreciated back then, but I'm not sure you're truly sorry now either. No. So Nathan, this time you are not forgiven.
And maybe the grandparents are still with us, in which case you need to make amends, because I think these antiques will be worth a bob or two, and you, Nathan, now have maybe a bob or two, certainly more money than you used to have. So I think you need to pay reparations to the grandparents.
I like this.
Actually, this is a new thing. We could put a financial cost.
Yeah.
So we're going to fine you, Nathan. What do you think a fine?
Well, obviously, taking everything into account, I'm going to say it needs to be in the four figures.
25 grand, I think.
So, yes, 5 figures. So, yeah, I mean, no, this is one of those things where everyone says, oh, we'll laugh about this later. No, we won't, Nathan, because you brought everything crashing down. But I think really it's the parents who need to shoulder some of the burden here, because surely the parents at some point should have said, look, Nathan, I know you love doing all of these hilarious pranks when we're at home, but now we're going to Granny and Grandad's. Let's probably temper that while we're there and not do any of your nonsense stuff there. So really it's the parents' fault and not